All righty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, OU is coming off of a win in Bedlam, improving to 6-4, bowl eligible. Took a little longer than we expected. We would have thought maybe week 6 they would have been bowl eligible. No, it took the 10th game. It's all right, but beat Oklahoma State. Quite a game, and definitely some thoughts there as far as the hot start, and then the offense just kind of went away. So we're going to be talking about that. But also, OU had a great recruiting weekend. There's a lot of recruits that were on campus. Reactions, crystal balls have been coming in. We're going to give our thoughts and opinions and things like that regarding recruiting. It was a great atmosphere to show the recruits what it could be like, rather than going somewhere like Texas A&M where the stadium was half empty, in other places. So it seemed like there was a great atmosphere and a great showing, and got the win again in Bedlam. I felt like that was huge. So that's what we're going to be doing and recapping our bets. Jose is hot as can be. Fade him with caution when it comes to your bets. He is tearing it up now, and we're going to recap our bets and give you an update on what happened there. Before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're like 13 subscribers away from 5,200 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button. Help us get us there. It's easy, free. Like the video, turn the notification bell on, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And it's kind of crazy that was the last game in the Palace for this season. So
and potentially the last Bedlam game ever,
that is,
or at least for a long time.
True. That is true. I didn't even think about that when the announcers brought it up, that depending on the scheduling next year, it very well might not happen, which is crazy to even think about considering how many years in a row that they've met. So we'll start off with recruiting because it seems like everyone wants to know what's going on with recruiting, and then we'll go into our thoughts and opinions on the game. So Sunday, a couple crystal balls came in favor of the Sooners for a couple of different targets. We'll start with Ashton Sanders. Brandon Drum of 247 Sports put a crystal ball in favor of Oklahoma for Sanders. Sanders is 6'1", 270 pound, 3-star from Los Angeles, California. He's a defensive lineman. Coming out, he's just recently got offered. I believe it was on Halloween. Came out for an official visit, and then a crystal ball came in quickly after that. We've talked about him before, and Oklahoma is the most prestigious football school that he has an offer to date, and it seemed like the atmosphere, maybe seeing how well the defense actually played, might have sold him. Sometimes it only takes one trip to sell someone on being a Sooner. What do you think about Sanders?
Well, not only I'm sure that the environment, the result of the game helped, but leading into this visit, clearly Oklahoma was behind the 8 ball here. Super late into offering. Never really had a ton of contact with him, but I know people have been extremely critical of Todd Bates, but his resume is impactful to getting interest from any defensive lineman, especially when you come in super late for a recruitment. It helped a lot in this case. Todd Bates has a proven track record of developing and putting guys into the NFL, and that helped Ashton Sanders get excited about the possibility of playing in Oklahoma. Clearly, this is just a crystal ball. We don't know for sure if it's going to happen, but it's a good sign where Oklahoma's at with recruiting, especially at the defensive line. I know a lot of people are probably a lot more interested in DJ Hicks and his friend Damian Sanford. It seems like if you pay attention to a lot of rumors, people feel like things are going well. We haven't gotten too much intel on that, but hopefully the rumors are true. We're not going to say that they are or aren't. But I did see a video from DJ when he first showed up to his hotel. I believe it was his dad in the room with him. They were talking about how this was the first time a coach had come in to welcome him at the hotel. I'm not sure if that was for every visit with other schools or just OU, but that's something that he wanted to make sure DJ took note of. Clearly, they are seriously taking another look at not being at A&M and being Sooners. Again, if that happens, we're probably not going to find out for a while. But with Ashton, I think that he's going to be a solid piece to add with depth, because after this year, for losing Isaiah Coe, Jalen Redmond could leave. Jeffrey Johnson will be gone. So it's going to be, in regards to experience, it's going to be really thin. We're going to have, is Jordan, I can't remember if Jordan Kelly will be gone or not. So essentially the entire starting four rotation will probably be gone. Jalen Redmond might have eligibility left, if I remember correctly.
I believe he has another year.
So he could come back, and I would expect him to. So he would be the most experienced defensive lineman. Then Kelvin Gilliam, Cedric Baxter. All the younger guys are going to need a lot more experience, and Ashton and Sanders are going to need to fill in that role of deep depth there. Because as we've seen with mainly the linebacker position this year, if you don't have those young guys far down the depth chart, you're going to be pretty thin at a position, especially on the defensive side of the ball right now as it's being developed. And I know we're going to talk about it later, but the defense is starting to look like the defense we all expected to see with Brent Venables at the helm.
Definitely. And another guy that a crystal ball came in favor of is Kendall Dolby. I think we talked a little bit about Kendall Dolby a little bit before leading up into this game. He plays up at NEO in Miami, Oklahoma. He's a cornerback, 5'11", 180 pounds. He holds offers from like Oklahoma State, Washington State, Boise State, and Arkansas. So he's got some Division I offers. He went down and visited Oklahoma. The crystal ball came in favor of him. Looking at the secondary, whether he'll be a corner or a safety, it just depends. But Woody Washington's most likely going to be gone. Jaden Davis is hit or miss sometimes. You just need the depth, and it seems like Kendall Dolby, OU's moving in the right direction with him. With the crystal ball coming in, I wouldn't expect a crystal ball to come in, and if Drum didn't have some sort of information or some sense of the situation. So while he might not wow you on the stars or anything like that, but I mean, he is talented. He is being recruited in for other Division I programs, and at the end of the day, we need defensive backs, whether it's corners or safeties, and whether they're high school or transfers. We need them. We need them all. So it seemed like OU probably hit it out of the park with Dolby, and Jay Valai probably just sold them on the development, because now, like you said earlier, and we'll talk about it, the defense is improving. I mean, it was, if you go back to TCU and Texas, I mean, it was atrocious. Not that it's good now, and it's not like it was great against Baylor or great against West Virginia, or even great against Oklahoma State, but it's showing signs of life. And I think that's what these coaches are able to sell these kids on, and saying, it takes time. What do you think about Dolby?
Yeah, I like him. I don't know if he'll be an impactful player, day one if he were to enroll at OU, but he would be great depth. He kind of, to me, feels like a Kenai Walker, first coming into Oklahoma, maybe a guy that could push guys to improve on the practice field and potentially get some snaps if there were some injuries, so maybe be on the two deep. But given his size and where it seems like Oklahoma's trying to shift to size-wise, having taller, lengthier corners, maybe he would be, if there's ever like a package where they need a nickel, get him at that spot. But it's tough to, because right now he's 5'11" is what he's listed at on 247, and I just checked the NEO website and they don't have his stats, but he's a sophomore, so he's got plenty of eligibility left. It'll just depend on where he would fit, right? Like you said, if there's always a potential for a corner to get shifted back to the safety position, if that's where the coaches feel he would be most impactful. But again, I think year one is going to be him learning the defense and being a good piece for depth, and hopefully be impactful year two at Oklahoma, or even year three, depending on how long he sticks around.
Definitely. And at the end of the day, you can't turn around talent and depth in the position that Oklahoma is in right now. So we'll see if both of those guys pop. It seems like they'll happen soon. National Signing Day we're weeks away. We're just a few weeks away now. I mean, we're getting to the end of November. We're knocking on the door of Thanksgiving. Only one regular season football game left for them, which is kind of hard to believe that we're already going in the last regular season game. It's kind of sad when you think about it. We wait all this time and then it flies by.
Yeah, it goes by way too fast. Hopefully, whenever the playoffs expand, we get a couple more games to be excited for towards the end here.
Yeah. So there's been hype and things going into this weekend as far as who's visiting, who's not visiting. Obviously with David Hicks, we can talk about. I mean, we don't have a ton of information on David Hicks other than the fact of he showed up. It seemed like it went well. You talked about that video about his dad was talking about the coach and visiting him and everything else. It seemed like it went well with David Hicks, and there's not a whole lot to say about him, and we're just gonna have to wait and see. Now it was hyped up that there was a mystery visitor, someone that's never visited before, and who was there is Now Etta. I feel like we talked about him just a little bit way back in the day, but we haven't talked about him in months. Enow is from Colleyville, Texas, which Colleyville is just northwest of Dallas. So he's not far away. 6'5", 260-pound defensive lineman. He's a top 100 player, extremely talented. He's put together back-to-back 20-plus sack seasons this year and last year, 20 sacks and 22 and a half sacks. Tackling machine, 134 tackles, 124 tackles the last 2 years. All around fantastic player who's currently committed to Michigan. Came up, visited Oklahoma. How long they've been talking, I have no idea. Where things really stand, I'm going to be honest, really no idea. Obviously he didn't take an official visit, or I don't think he took an official visit, and I'll say that. Obviously he's got to have some sort of interest in Oklahoma, or there's something going on about him, maybe second guessing Michigan, or maybe he's wanting to stay closer to home. But I'm shocked that OU was able to get him on campus. What do you think?
Yeah, and he was one of the first offers that the staff gave early in January this year. And pretty much since then, it's been really nothing on it, The only tidbit of where I would feel he has interest in being at Oklahoma is because he wanted to keep it a secret initially, as if he's trying to hide it from the Michigan staff for whatever reason. I'm not sure if Michigan doesn't allow players to take visits after committing, or if it's whatever the situation was there. He clearly, was it the morning of or the night before is where it became public that it was that he was a surprise visitor for this game. So he felt comfortable with it, even though at first he wanted to keep it a secret. Something made him feel comfortable about allowing reporters to put his name out there as a visitor. So I mean, it's tough to say, right? Like you said, we don't know for sure. While it might seem that he has interest, we don't know for sure where the staff will be with the defensive line. Clearly, we still have, Ashton Sanders is a guy that they have targeted and probably don't want to back off the offer if they don't know that for sure Enow is going to make a flip. David Hicks still waiting on if that flip is possible. Damian Sanford, there's a lot of players that they're still awaiting decisions from, and there's so few spots. At the end of the day, you only have so many scholarships to offer. And Enow currently holds a scholarship and a commitment to Michigan, not a bad school to go to. Defense has been pretty good over the last couple of years, so it's going to be a tough guy to flip, but not impossible, especially with the coaching staff that is there right now for defense.
And you're totally right. And people are like, again, Todd Bates. But I think Todd Bates has a lot of influence, like you said. These kids want to play for Todd Bates. All the coaches, from home are claiming that Todd Bates isn't that great, but for some reason these kids keep showing up because they like him. And they like Venables, of course, too. But obviously what they're selling these kids is working to at least get them there. Because I
And
don't feel like E now Etta would have shown up before.
and I think for whatever reason, the expectations of some fans when like we talk about Todd Bates and Thune or Drum or other platforms that cover recruiting talk about Todd Bates having an effect on this staff and how we recruit defensive line. Some fans just expect, all right, because we have Todd Bates, we should be able to get the 1, 2, and 3 and 4 interior defensive linemen, and Todd Bates should be able to help Chavis secure top 10 edge players every single class without a doubt. That's not how recruiting works. People don't just, they're not going to just give in to a brand and a specific coach. Other coaches are working hard at recruiting them. Sometimes you get beat. It's just like sports. There's a reason that you go through this process. There's a reason you play the game. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. And Todd Bates, at the end of the day, is at least putting us in a position to be a possibility and a place where elite defensive linemen are entertaining going to. Before Todd Bates, I mean, Jamar Kane and Coach Thibodeau were doing a good job at trying to improve that recruiting over the last few years. But really, when's the last time we saw? I mean, Derek LeBlanc. I don't think a Derek LeBlanc uh, would have taken a real shot at Oklahoma if it wasn't for Todd Bates. Actually, we know for a fact he probably wouldn't have been here. He would have been at Clemson or even Florida. A guy like PJ, would the staff have even found him, or the previous staff have found him? Because he wasn't an edge from day one in high school. He shifted over, and the staff saw the talent that he could have had. Now he's a consensus 5-star with all recruiting platforms. Like, this staff is doing what they have to do to put themselves in a spot where they're at least competing for the top defensive linemen of the 23 class, the 24 class, and moving forward, however long they're here. We're not going to get them all, but we're at least going to get a shot at them.
And they're going to land a good chunk of kids anyway. You can't get everyone. I mean, it's just like Alabama. They don't land everyone, and some classes are better than others. I mean, they're having the number one class this year, but they definitely weren't number one last year. So it just, it ebbs and flows. And as long as you're in the top 10 every single year, and then occasionally, every so often you get in that top 3 class, you've got enough talent on campus to win national championships. So, I mean, there was a lot of other guys there, Peyton Bowen, and, kids were posting. David Stone was there. And we're just going to have to wait and see as far as, what exactly these visits are going to lead to. Like anything, it takes time. Not many kids are just going to come out and flip and commit right on the spot. It takes time. They got to talk with their families, friends, and everything else. So we'll be keeping a close eye on it. Do you have any more thoughts on any recruiting talk, or you ready to move on to talk actual football?
Yeah, let's talk some actual football.
All right, so Oklahoma rebounding, winning 28-13 against Oklahoma State, improving to 6-5, securing a bowl berth. Oklahoma State falls to 7-4. All I got to say is that first quarter was crazy. If I would have told you it was going to be 28-0 at the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter, if I would have told you that a week ago, you would have probably told me I was insane. I couldn't believe my eyes what I was watching, and it almost felt too good to be true. And they came out and played with their hair on fire, and I just thought to myself, I was like, where's this team been at since after the Nebraska game? This is fantastic. They're jumping routes. They're throwing, getting interceptions. They dropped a few interceptions, and then Braden Willis fumbled, and then it's not like the wheels fell off on the defense. I mean, the defense only gave up 13 points. I mean, you can't ask for much more. They played solid. Probably one of their best games all year, honestly. That they put wire to wire. They played great. The offense was there for the first quarter, and then disappeared for the next 45 minutes. What do you think?
Before I get into that, I did forget one thing on recruiting. Just keep an eye on if David Hicks goes to the last A&M game of the season. It's a big game against LSU, even though A&M sucks. It's a big opponent that they have. So we'll see if he attends that game. Back to the Bedlam game. To your point, the offense, outside of the first quarter, looked like they were doing everything they could to make it the hardest game possible for this defense. And we've said it all year. They've improved a little bit every single week, but they had never played a game like they did Saturday against Oklahoma State. The most entertaining thing for me was how much the linebackers were communicating. If you watch games before Saturday for Oklahoma, you usually see maybe Stutzman, maybe a Wegu doing the communicating, but you would never see the other guys react to it. You wouldn't see it. It wasn't a group effort. It was one guy doing most of the communicating and others trying to process that information. Saturday, it was a team effort, and for anyone that has ever played team sports, you know that on at all phases of the game, but specifically when you play defense, if it's basketball, football, soccer, you need all all the people on that side of the ball to work as one unit. It's not like offense where one individual can take over, one individual has a bigger impact than another. Yeah, you have impact players on defense, but you need the entire unit to move as one and to work how it did on Saturday. Like you said, we got four picks, four turnovers, and they could have had probably another three or four more where they dropped them. Billy Bowman could have had a second one. CJ Colden could have had probably like one or two more. Lualu almost had a second one when he dropped back into zone coverage. He just barely missed it, but he did get his hand on the ball to tip it and force an incompletion. Like the defense was firing on all cylinders. Were there things where they were still messing up a little bit? Yeah, the biggest thing to me was like I think it was in the third quarter for the most part when they were having these issues. They would break contain a lot, where it was giving Spencer Sanders a lot of running lanes, or they just weren't very disciplined and how they were attacking that offensive line. You would see two or three guys trying to attack the same gap, essentially giving the perimeter up to Sanders, and then they would try to make up a ton of yards, try to catch up to Sanders, but he was gone at that point, right? They ended up fixing it in the fourth quarter for the most part, but as a whole, like for a full 60 minutes, this defense played really well. And they are the only reason Oklahoma won that game on Saturday. If the defense would have had two or three series where they would have, let up or were just gassed and couldn't recover, this would have been a very ugly game. And I don't know. Venable said in his press conference, and I'm glad someone asked, and I'm glad how candid he was. He hated the clock management. He didn't say he hated it verbatim, but he said he was not happy with clock management in the second half. It was terrible. How do you have a big lead? If you're not going to run the ball, at least wait until the play clock is, to the last 5 seconds. When you're snapping the ball when there's 20, 25 seconds, and that was at the most, like you're essentially the longest drive we had in the second half was like a minute 20 seconds. Like you can't do that. You're just you're forcing this defense to play a ton of time, which is usually not ideal for anyone, especially specifically for this defense that we've seen throughout the day. Again, they just stepped up on Saturday. And two, you're giving the other team more opportunities to score. Like we're just lucky that we're playing against Mike Gundy, because for whatever reason, he just chokes against Oklahoma. And I don't know why. It seems like Oklahoma State fans are really starting to catch on to that fact that he just doesn't step up in this big game. But man, it's the defense I'm happy with, and hopefully they can get that momentum and that swagger to the last game of the season against Texas Tech, because it is in Lubbock and it's going to be a tough place to play. But the offense needs to figure it out. For the most part, with the last two games, I would agree the players didn't execute. But Saturday, I would say that one's on Levy, just like the Texas game. You have to be better at game planning for what you've got and better at clock management. Anyone that's decent at playing a freaking video game probably could have told you should probably let the play clock run down a little bit if you've got such a big lead and your offense can't convert on third down. Just try to bleed that clock out.
The Sooners would have been better just to take 3 knees.
Yeah, I saw that
drain
stat.
the clock. Because let me read you every drive time in the second half. Minute 22, minute 9, minute 13, minute 11, minute 12, minute 27, minute 18, 1 minute, and then the last one was 16 seconds, excuse me, as they took a knee. I mean, so the entire second half, the longest one was a minute 27 seconds.
And
if you would have just taken knees, it would have been fine.
And I think it was the second to last series before they were just taking knees. What's that one? Yeah. So they went. They got 5 yards out of Eric Gray, bled 40 seconds off those two plays. Then Dylan snaps it almost immediately, getting to the line on the third down. And it's an incomplete pass, which isn't ideal, but why would you snap it immediately? Like, I know you're probably trying to get the defense, catch them off guard, get them to be a little frantic, but you just bled 40 seconds on two plays. Let's bleed another 20. And maybe that gives your guys on the offense some time to recuperate, because they also got to catch their breath too.
It's bizarre. I mean, it was painful to watch. I mean, it was just, we couldn't get a first down. It was incredible. It's kind of mind-boggling to me how it just literally could not get a first down in the second half, to not even go score, just to bleed 3 minutes off the clock. I mean, if that first quarter wasn't there, I mean, they literally might not have scored. And I think what Levy's struggling with is it seems like in the very beginning of the games, at least this game, he had probably 15 plays that he already scripted out. It was very scripted. He knew what he wanted to go with. These are their first 2, 3, 4 drives. These are the plays I'm going to call, in some variety of these. And then when it comes into later in the game, when Oklahoma State or the opponent adjusts, does Levy adjust? And I think he's struggling with that. And he's overthinking things. And granted, some things are player issues, not catching a football. I mean, I will cut Dylan Gabriel some slack. He had like 3 or 4 passes in the second half where it hit people in the shoulder, in the chest, and they just dropped it. So there's that component too. It's not everything's on Jeff Levy, but I would agree with you. More of it would be on Levy. That it was just like just burn the clock at this point. We're not going to go score. Just be mindful of that. When you have 37 minutes and 38 seconds for the other team of time of possession, and your offense only has it for 22 minutes, 22 seconds, most of the time you lose that game when you have the ball for 22 minutes. OU is very fortunate, because if the defense wouldn't have stood up, and when it was 28-13, Oklahoma State got the ball back, was it around 6-7 minutes or something like that? They got the ball after, I think, the plays that you were talking about where they picked up 5 yards and then they rushed up there and whatever. I think that was the punt. If Oklahoma State would have went down there and scored and made it 28-20, 28-21, I don't know if Oklahoma would have won this game, because I started to get uneasy. And I knew, and if I was getting uneasy, I knew these players were starting to second guess themselves.
Yeah, and we had a friend bring up the 28-3 debacle that seems to be cursing everyone, and that frustrated me when I saw it, and I was just antsy after that, and that was early in the game. And once we couldn't score another one, I was like, yeah, we're about to get 28-3. And it is solely because we can't freaking manage the clock. It's probably one of the basic things that a coach should know how to do. But we didn't. We just said, fuck it. We're going to go as fast as humanly possible. And then I listened to Jeff Levy's post-game press conference. I don't think he understands what went wrong, because one of his first answers was he needs to make sure that they're playing with tempo. Tempo is not the problem, my dude, especially with Saturday's game. It's clock management. You have to be able to know when to play with tempo. And Saturday was not the time to just try to go as fast as humanly possible, especially again when you know your offense, when you're not putting your offense in a position to convert on third down. Like, and I agree with you. Dylan Gabriel wasn't really the problem on Saturday. He had issues there. Yeah, he probably didn't make some of the best plays, but he had Jalil Farouk dropped. I'm pretty sure all the three drops that I remember were all going to be on for first downs. And the last one where it literally hit him right in the chest on the sideline would have been I know for a fact that would have been a first down to extend the drive past probably like a minute and 10 seconds, but he dropped it. Like, you can't have those happen. You can't have a wide receiver that drops it when it hits it right in the chest. And that's been an issue for the last few games. Something that I'm curious about what Levy and Dylan have done to try to improve is if you rewatch the game in the first quarter, yeah, the offense was clicking, but watch how Dylan is throwing the ball. He's got just great touch, especially on those deep balls to Drake Stoops. They were nice and high where Drake had enough time to get his eyes on it and adjust to the ball. Kind of like Russell Wilson when he was in his prime. When you watch the next three quarters, he's trying to Brett Favre those things right into the wide receiver's hands, which is fine sometimes, but he's trying to do that on no matter if it's 60 yards down the field or 6 yards. Like, you have to have a little bit of awareness and touch on those footballs, because if you're just trying to zip it in every time, it's going to be tough for the wide receiver to adjust to the ball. And especially when you know you've had some drop issues, it makes it a little tougher for those guys to get any confidence when you're just zipping it 60 miles an hour into their hands every time.
Yeah, and Brandon and I would always joke about the guy that would always do that. Not only is Brett Favre, but do you remember Chad Henne?
Yeah, just relax.
Yeah,
They're right there, bro.
there were rockets flying out of his arms in the NFL, and the guys would just drop it and they're 5 yards away. Um, I'm glad that OU won. It's just, I think the adjustments, I think that as soon as the confidence starts to waver, they start second guessing themselves. And I think Levy's trying to find himself as far as being a play caller and other things like that. So there's a multitude of things. And, because he did have Lane Kiffin there. And while Levy was, the offensive coordinator, I'm sure Lane Kiffin had a lot of say and a lot of influence on decisions and situational football. So he's trying to figure it out. And Brent Venables is just hands off because that's not his side of the ball. So he's trying to let him find himself, I guess. But looking at positives on the offense, Drake Stoops on senior night probably had his best game of his career. 6 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown. That falling backwards and catching that ball in the first quarter was great. Eric Gray, again, 120 total yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's secured himself to be a mid-round pick, in the NFL. So, that was his last time playing at the Palace. He played really well. It was cool to see Gavin Freeman play a little bit. Not that he did a whole lot, but it was nice to see him on the field a little bit. And then the frustrating part was Braden Willis fumbling. That was tough. That killed a little bit of momentum, but who played well on defense? You look at David Owegbu played pretty well. Jordan Kelly played pretty well. Stutzman played well. Ethan Downs played well. There were some positives. I just think really the bad taste in your mouth just comes from how the offense just went away. And looking at the defense, they only gave up 13 points. They were on the field for 37 and a half minutes. They did give up 484 yards of offense. But I'm not even upset with them. When you're on the field for nearly 40 minutes of a football game, you're bound to give up yards, and especially with how thin Oklahoma is. Because what difference would it made if OU would have gotten a stop on OSU? OSU would have punted. It would have been 1 minute, maybe a minute 30 if you're lucky that OU has the ball, and then you're back out on the field. You're going to give up more yards. It's not like OU couldn't get stops. They were getting stops left and right. It just wasn't working out for them.
Yeah, and that's been the theme since the bye week, really. The defense has improved every week since the beginning of the year, but mainly since the bye week. We've seen like actual visual improvements where really feel like if you're really looking for where things have gotten better, you can tell, especially in the pass defense, it's getting better, and they're giving the offense more opportunities to score, but the offense is not capitalizing on it. And I think, like you said, the defense at all three levels did well on Saturday. Jordan Kelly, pretty much on his own, got a 3-and-out. I think it was in the second quarter. He got a tackle for loss and then sacked Spencer Sanders on third down, forcing him to punt deep on their side of the field. So hopefully, we can see a lot of the same against Texas Tech and in our bowl game, because that defensive line did not look scared yesterday. Whoever playing up against the Oklahoma State offensive line, and it's a rivalry game. If there was any game where you could see a little bit of jitters, it's against Texas and Oklahoma State. But against Oklahoma State, they looked like they were undefeated and trying to complete the season to secure a playoff berth. Clearly, we were just trying to secure a bowl berth, but that's what they played like. Their pants were on fire.
No, and it was critical for OU to win. I mean, you had a bunch of recruits, and obviously you needed to win to go to a bowl game, and OU can't miss out on a bowl game. But what you can look at, assuming that OU can go into Lubbock and win, since the Texas game, OU would have been, if they win next week, 4-2, and those two losses came at a combined score of 6 points. And maybe you go in and you win the bowl game, and you finish 5-2 in the last 7, and your two losses are by a combined score of 6. You're able at that point to kind of look at it and be like, we're not that far away. It feels like sometimes OU's far away, but really when you look at it as a whole, finish the season 5-2, losing 2 games by 3 points each, you are not far. And this is one of the worst teams as far as depth and maybe talent goes that OU's had in a long time, and you're still not that far. And then you bring in this recruiting class that's looking to be a top 10. You land some serious transfer portal candidates, and you close out this class, strong over the next month, and then into February. There could be a total different feel by next August of this team and where the depth's at. In a year of in the system as a whole, you get some of the older guys out and younger guys, and maybe a little more raw, but they're at least been in the system for over a year. There could be a lot of momentum going into next year.
Yeah, I agree. And especially with, what you're saying, like next year, depth wise, should be a lot better than this year, especially at the quarterback position. And we have a lot of depth, but clearly it's not very good depth at quarterback. But next year you'll have potentially Dylan Gabriel will return. Nick Evers will be in his sophomore year, true sophomore year, redshirt freshman year. You have your 5-star quarterback, Jackson Arnold. Those three are going to be competing for either the starting job, or Dylan will be the QB1 again. And then you've got 2 really talented young guys competing for the backup position. I know some people have pretty much already crowned Jackson Arnold the savior of the Oklahoma program, and others are, maybe like me most of the time, are just saying like, let's just see and wait to see what he does. I'm not saying he's not very talented or that he can't come in and play day one, but I think we're all forgetting how hard it is to, just as a regular student, to transition from living at home and having a more structured day in high school to living on your own and pretty much having all the freedom in the world with the least amount of responsibility you'll ever have as an 18-year-old. He's going to, just like everyone else, is going to experience that and have football added, the pressure of football on top of that. It's not going to be easy for him to just quickly pick up the playbook. I know it's a very similar offense, but he'll be good. I'm just personally, I don't think he will be the day one savior of Oklahoma to be national champion in next year, but he will be QB1 one day, maybe next year, maybe the year after. That's a different story. The depth at quarterback, like I said, better. The depth at running back is still going to be very good. The depth at the offensive line will be better because we're not losing a ton there. At offensive line, I know McCade Mettauer was expected to leave after this year, but There's a chance he may not. Anton will probably leave, so we are going to be replacing a left tackle. Chris Murray will leave. We'll be replacing a guard. Is Wani leaving for sure? Like, does he have to leave?
No, I think he has one more year left.
All right. So we potentially have a returning right tackle, which is pivotal for a lefty quarterback if Dylan's still QB1, and two returning center and guard. So not a ton to replace there like we've had in the past. Good depth at wide receiver as usual. Better depth at linebacker. I wouldn't say like the best depth at defensive line, but decent depth at defensive line and corners. I think corners, DBs in general are going to be a lot better, and depth will be pretty good there, especially if we can get a couple more guys in this recruiting class at safety or corner.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a win is a win. Can't complain. It's a lot better than losing. So happy that OU won, bowl eligible. Hopefully they can close it out and go finish the season at 7-5. There was a point in time where people would have never thought that OU would have had 6 wins this year. So
what was it 3-3, right? After we went on that 3-game losing streak. A lot of people in the comment section were pretty much saying those 3 wins are all we're getting. We're going to be A&M.
Yeah, which obviously is not true. So do you have any more thoughts, or do you want to just recap our bets?
Let's go ahead and recap the bets.
All right. Well, I ended up going 3-3 this week. Jose, you went 9-4. Correct. I improved to 37-31-1. And what are you?
46-36-1.
46-36-1. So fade Jose with caution. I'll just summarize. I'll go through mine really fast. I took OSU plus 7.5. That was almost a backdoor cover. I thought in the very beginning of the game that it was going to be a blowout, and obviously it ended up not being a blowout. It should have been. I took Auburn minus 5.5. That was a win. They blew out Western Kentucky. Georgia Tech upset UNC. I took Georgia Tech plus 21. I took Texas Tech plus 3.5 against Iowa State, and they ended up winning. Ole Miss got blown out by Arkansas. I took them minus 2.5. And then I took UCLA plus 2.5. They had a chance to win at the end of the game, and they did not.
So, all right, I've got quite a bit to go through. So I took Tennessee minus 21.5. Clearly, the Gamecocks slapped them. But I also took the over on that game, which I'm glad I did, because Spencer Rattler and the boys pretty much covered that on their own with a couple points help from Tennessee. So 1-1 with that game alone. I took the under on the Ole Miss Arkansas game. I only lost that by a couple points. Really unfortunate. Thought that Ole Miss would have been able to hold the Arkansas offense to fewer points, but for whatever reason, Arkansas decided they were going to be really good on Saturday. LSU, they started pretty slow, but they picked it up, really finished that game strong. I had them minus 14.5. I think they won by like 20 or 30. Can't remember. Oregon, they were a home dog. I don't understand why, but they ended up winning. But I had them at 2.5 plus 2.5. Lost the TCU bet. I had them at minus 2.5. They won with the last second field goal, which was crazy. I saw a video of a fan. They were about to run on the field, storm the field, right before TCU just took their souls right from their bodies. Oklahoma minus 7.5. Like I said, they just have to play a good game, not a great game, not a perfect game, and they were able to do that in one quarter. And the defense played nearly perfect game to hold that. Michigan minus 18. Hopefully Blake Corum is not out for the week, because if you have a fully healthy Michigan versus a fully healthy Ohio State, it's going to be a very exciting game, but it's going to be tough for Michigan to do anything without their star running back against Ohio State. I had the over on Notre Dame and Boston College. Notre Dame covered that by themselves. The total was 42.5. I believe Notre Dame scored 44 that game. I had the over of Georgia, Kentucky. I might have lost that one too. Let me double check myself there.
And it was a combined like 20 points.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So I did lose that one.
Okay, so you're 8-5 then?
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
8-5.
Lost that. And then then my next one was Clemson minus 18.5. I genuinely thought I was going to lose that one, but Clemson was able to hold them off for the last stretch of the game there. They ended up winning by 30. Texas versus Kansas, I had the over of that game. The total was 63.5, and Texas was able to score 55 by themselves with an assist from Kansas with another 14 points, so covered that. And then my weekly bet, the Iowa under. Somehow they continue to amaze the world. They had the lowest point total in history given on that game at 32.5 points. Halfway through the second quarter, the game was 10-7. It looked like that under had no chance. The ending score, I don't want to get it wrong. Let me double check it. I believe it was, the ending score ended up being 13-10. Iowa won, but that is awful. That defense, amazing. That offense, if the head coach doesn't fire his son, he hates Iowa.
Watching Iowa games is gross. It's just gross.
I mean, they win, which is good, but imagine if they had just a somewhat competent offensive coordinator. And I was saying it last offseason when the transfer portal stuff started happening with Oklahoma, Iowa should have been a front runner for Spencer Rattler. I know he hasn't been amazing, but imagine having Spencer Rattler with a semi-competent offensive coordinator at Iowa. They'd probably be legit competitors for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, they might have. I don't know. It's brutal to watch, but so not a bad weekend for either one of us. I hit 50%. You hit like 65, whatever it is. Not too shabby. Can't complain. But a solid week of football overall. Glad OU got the win. Do you have any thoughts, or do you want to do an individual challenge or anything like that?
Yeah, let's just do your thoughts on the Bedlam game. And do you think that Oklahoma can secure their 7th dub at Lubbock to end the season?
I just saw that OU's a 1-point favorite. I think it was 1 or 1.5 point favorite. So Vegas thinks so. But it's gonna be close.
It's gonna be very tough. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right. Well, if you made it so far, we appreciate it. Hit the like button. If you made it through this whole video and you're not subscribed, you might as well hit the subscribe button. Turn the notification bell on. And remember, when you like and comment on the video and you're already subscribed, it helps us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. We will catch you guys later this week.